Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for another ICBA cast. I'm Jordan Bateman, the Director of Communications for the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association, joined as always by
Chris Gardner, President of ICBA.
Chris is squeezing this recording in. He has big plans for the weekend. If it's Friday, it's Chris Gardner partying in Prince George.
It is going to be outstanding.
Yeah, there's at a pub whose name is it Woody's? Is that it? Woody's Pub?
No, it's a new. Actually, there's a couple of events we're going to, and
Okay.
there's a new brew pub in Prince George. We're going to that. So going to meet some members. Got a lot of meetings set up. So it's going to be a good trip. And the weather in Prince George is great this time of year. So
Prince
looking forward
George,
to it.
the capital of the North, as we
That's
like
right.
to say. And then from there, you will head to Toronto next week for some meetings with the Merit Canada folks.
Yeah, Toronto, we've got some counterparts across the country that we're going to be meeting with and talking about how the federal landscape is shaping out. And
A year from an election.
that's right.
It's
And
kinda
we've got, we'll be in Toronto, so we'll be doing some, we'll have some conversations around the new provincial government and the agenda that they're about to roll out and how that's going. And that'll be quite interesting, quite exciting to see the big change. Yesterday, the CEO of Hydro One and the board were let go.
Yep.
So,
Today they're repealing the carbon tax legislation.
yeah.
I saw that. It's big news in Ontario. Now, Chris, for the first time, we're starting to see some of the statistics appear showing that jobs are being lost,
Right.
employment is shrinking, businesses are not. Some businesses are going out of business. It seems to me that the storm clouds we've been talking about for a long time are beginning to gather, and BC's economy this fall might be in for a bit of a rocky ride.
Well, I think what's happened, and it is starting to show up in the numbers, and you're right. You know, any one of the new policies, whether it's the regulatory changes or the tax increases that the NDP have brought in and of themselves, you might say, okay, fine, we can live with that. The challenge is, it's a cascade of new taxes in every part of the business sector. So businesses and individuals are reeling. So let's just walk through a couple of them. Personal income taxes have increased.
Yeah.
Corporate income taxes have increased. There's a new payroll tax, which will hit small business hard.
Yeah.
There's a quote-unquote speculation tax, quote-unquote an education tax.
The carbon tax has gone up.
Yeah, so all of these taxes.
There's a new gas tax.
There's a new gas tax. So this was going to ripple through the economy and have a negative impact. You cannot tax housing into affordability.
Nope.
You can't tax an economy into prosperity. There has to be, obviously, I think everybody agrees, a level of taxation that makes sense. The problem is that in the first 12 months of the Horgan administration, they raised $5.5 billion in new taxes and spent every penny of it.
And more.
And walk around and say, hey, the budget's balanced, everything's okay. It's not okay. They've extracted $5.5 billion in taxes from businesses and individuals, and the chickens are going to come home to roost, and it's not good for our economy, it's not good for competitiveness, and we're going to start to see that in the numbers.
Yeah, this is already eroding consumer confidence. We see it in real estate. Now, out there, lots of people are like, wow, real estate market was too hot. Okay, it was red hot for quite a while. Now, though, we've seen sales fall. We've seen prices begin to slip. Yep. The interest rate has gone up now. Bank of Canada raised interest rates yesterday. That's going to have a further dampening effect on the market. The problem with that, people, is that property transfer tax is a huge cash cow for government and pays for a lot of the school, the education, the health care services that we rely on. So if that starts to slip, the NDP have already raised all the taxes that they can really raise. I mean, there's more I'm sure that they would like to increase because they're the NDP and that's what they do for a living. But at some point, this thing all breaks down. You can only tax so much. You'll see this with the TransLink gas tax. They've allowed another $1.50. This will probably actually provide far less revenue than TransLink and the provincial government believes, because the higher the gas taxes are, the less gas tax revenue you actually get in, because people have to change their behavior.
Yeah, and I think what the government's lost sight of in terms of affordability on the housing side of the equation is that they haven't focused enough on supply.
Yeah.
And that's partly because there is a narrative out there, well, if we let developers build more homes, the developers will make more money.
Right.
And that's just completely ridiculous. We want businesses to succeed and be and to hire new people and to be profitable. but we need new housing in the marketplace.
But the real mistake problem there is that the province, under both Christy Clark and John Horgan, have refused to fight and push and scratch and claw with municipal governments to get more supply. Yeah. They refuse to do what it takes to force municipal governments to approve things quicker. And the reason why is no one likes to have a fight with the mayor, right? It's great politics. Just like John Horgan, benefits from fighting with Justin Trudeau, age-old kind of thing. Mayors benefit when they fight with premiers. No one likes to be pushed around by the bigger kid on the block. But if the province does not actually do the things and take strong actions to force more supply, municipalities cater to the NIMBYs, the 30 people who show up at the public hearing.
That's right.
Especially in an election year, they're not going to do anything risky. And we can talk about the BD project in Chinatown as a perfect example, or Anthem's project in Surrey along Coyote Creek Golf Course. Perfect examples of municipal councils turtling in front of a few dozen activists, people with very vested interests, rather than doing what's best for the overall health of their communities.
Yeah, and so the NDP, what they've done is taken the easy way out. They're not going to get into a fight with municipalities. It is ridiculous to think that it takes as long to permit and approve a high-rise tower as it does to build it. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
It takes as long to do the paperwork as it does to actually, pour the concrete, put in the rebar. Right. Yeah.
So they've taken the easy way out, and then they've put in all these taxes under the guise of we are going to stop speculation, which the tax regime they put in isn't going to address speculation. And two, they're going to tax the wealthy because the wealthy, quote unquote, the wealthy can afford to pay a little bit more. And the challenge with that is that you've got a whole raft of folks who are retired and have equity in their homes. Mm-hmm. And some of those folks bought their homes 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, have now tipped over a $3 million assessment, and they're not going to have to pay a tax.
Yeah, well, the income tax applies to households making $150,000 a year or more. Yeah. That's two teachers married to each other, or a cop married to a firefighter. Like, that is not the kind of wealthy that I think most of us think about. That's hardly the 1%. Right. Two teachers married to each other. Right. It doesn't make any sense. I was very concerned to read today that Ian Campbell, the Vision Vancouver candidate for mayor and the hereditary chief of the Squamish First Nation, his solution to housing problems is, we should get more supply going. No concrete examples of how he'd get more supply going. But really what we should do is triple the empty homes tax in Vancouver. So Vancouver modeled this so-called speculation tax in their municipality. Didn't do anything to actually increase rental properties, but hey, whatever. He's going to triple it from 1% to 3% of assessed value on top of the speculation tax that the province charges.
Well, there was a great article that we read earlier this week about Seattle. And Seattle had a similar problem going back 5 years ago, and they did something unusual. They let the private sector build more homes, more houses of all kinds, and now there isn't a shortage of rental accommodation. There isn't a shortage of housing for young families and first-time home buyers to look at and get into the market. And until we do more of that, we're still going to be under pressure. Mm-hmm. If the housing market in Vancouver comes off 10%, if the average home price falls 10%, are we now into affordability territory? No, we won't be, by the measure of a young family or young professionals looking to buy a home. The only way we're going to have a significant impact on affordability is by putting more supply on the market.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a point, right? What about those young families who bought into the market as it was heating up, have a little bit of equity in it, but we'll soon see it sapped away if house prices fall? That's precisely what plunged the United States into economic recession. Yeah. Mortgages going underwater and people walking away from their homes.
I don't think the Minister of Finance should be saying that if you bought your home in the last 5 years and you have a fairly large mortgage, and the value of your home might dip below that mortgage as a result of the measures they're doing, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's quite shocking that a Minister of Finance would say that.
Yeah, and the truth is they don't know what they want prices to be. They want prices to be exactly what it takes for it to stop being a front page story every week. Right. So that's problematic. Chris, let's talk about an op-ed you have coming out this weekend. We believe in the province on Sunday. Hopefully, it is on something else that will drive up construction costs and drive up the cost of delivering public projects, which of course then drives up our taxes. Talk to me about steel. Talk to me about rebar and the new tariffs.
Yeah, that's an issue that everyone should be concerned about. The challenge with what's going on right now, and the Trump administration is very much putting Donald Trump's America First agenda in play in its relationships across the board, whether they're security relationships, defense relationships, trading partnerships, NAFTA, the TTP, the Pacific Trading Agreement with a number of countries in Asia, except for China, and he's doing a good job of creating a lot of uncertainty. He's imposed tariffs on European countries, on Canada, on China, and then countries are responding. So this is for all those folks who for decades said NAFTA was bad and free trade is bad. We're now going to feel the very negative effects of a trade war and of countries putting up duties and tariffs to protect their domestic industries. And in construction, what is happening is that the price of steel the price is going to rise because we are responding in kind and putting tariffs on steel emanating from the United States, coming from Asia, and it's doing two things. One is part of it is to protect steel mills in Eastern Canada, and the other part is to respond. The challenge for British Columbia and Alberta, but let's talk about British Columbia, is that we source rebar, which goes into a new SkyTrain extension, the Patella Bridge replacement, high-rise towers for condos, new community centers, a whole raft of construction projects that use rebar. We get about 85% of the rebar in this market from either the United States or countries in Asia. And tariffs are being applied on steel coming from those markets. It's going to increase, and we're all going to feel the increased cost of that.
Yeah, it's terrifically bad news for taxpayers, and because most of us don't build our own condo towers, so we have no idea what rebar costs, and it'll end up costing more for the end user there, the end buyer. But for those of us who pay taxes, which is everyone, every road uses rebar, every concrete divider, every project virtually in the province uses rebar. And if steel costs go up 25, 40, 50%, that means less work that they can do with that pot of tax money.
That's right.
Which means one of two things, or three things. They'll cancel projects, they'll incur more debt, or they'll come after us for more taxes.
Right. And so we do have to respond. I don't think Canada can't sit idly by while the United States or other countries imposes tariffs on our products. But we have to be, I think, a little bit more strategic, because the broad brush of tariffs on imported steel is going to adversely impact British Columbia in a way it won't impact markets in Ontario and Quebec. So and that's so effectively we've got a tariff policy that's really made for Central Canada, Eastern Canada, and not for British Columbia. And that often is the case. We'll often get the short end of the stick in British Columbia because of the political reality that most of the seats for the federal government are in Ontario and Quebec.
Yep, and compounded by the fact that we have a premier who's in open hostile warfare with the Prime Minister, so it's not exactly like the Prime Minister is bending over backwards to help John Horgan out.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah. See, it all comes back to Kinder Morgan.
There you go.
Everything we do.
Yes.
By the way, Chris, there is a North Thompson Provincial Park, beautiful park near Kamloops. Last week it was closed for a few days to allow a First Nations gathering there. A militant wing of one of the First Nations involved has decided that they will not return the park to public use. They're actually, BC Parks is now canceling provincial campers' reservations there, trying to find other places for them. Some people are just completely out of luck. All because of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, so they say. Is this the next step of a long, hot summer of protests?
Well, I think, yes, I'm going to say a long, hot summer. I would say a series of protests in the fall and the winter. And there's two issues here. One is Kinder Morgan itself. And we've talked about that a lot. This is a project that has been gone through an amazingly rigorous review. It was approved 2 years ago, and there should be shovels in the ground. but because of the reckless position that John Horgan has staked out on this issue, we're now mired in a series of court actions that they've initiated and uncertainty to the point where Kinder Morgan sold the pipeline to the federal government because they weren't willing to take the risk of continued obstruction, not from protesters, but from the government of British Columbia. So that's a concern. There are issues around how the provincial government and the federal governments have been approaching First Nation and Indigenous communities. And the challenge is that there's so much uncertainty in those areas and those relationships that it can, and I think, well, the implications for our long-term prosperity are significant if the province and the federal government don't find a way to work with the private sector and to come to framework agreements that will allow everything from mining, forestry, pipelines, bridges, other infrastructure to move forward in a way that's commercially viable.
Yeah. Flip side, LNG, looks like LNG Canada, it really does seem like we're getting a positive final investment decision, maybe as early as the first week of September. Kitimat's going crazy already with house prices. Fort St. John's just starting to see it. Looks to me like the locals are getting ready.
No, which is great. It will be great news for this country and for British Columbia.
For construction.
For construction, for the supply chain for this $40 billion project is going to be enormous and will be felt across many parts of British Columbia and other parts of Canada. That's good. Great news in terms of establishing Canada as a significant LNG exporter. And so it's great. And it was good that, really this is the result primarily of a lot of work that the BC Liberal government did under Christy Clark to set the table for this. The good thing on this is one file where the NDP didn't put up roadblocks. They cleared the path, worked with with LNG Canada, and so it's good for everyone. And
cut taxes.
Yes, they cut taxes to get this project over the line, and so ultimately it will be a great project for British Columbia, for Canada, and hopefully we get that formal FID in another few weeks.
It'll also be the bulletproof vest that John Horgan puts on during the election campaign to try to fend off attacks that he's not interested in growing the economy.
There will be that.
But one project does not a province make, even if it is the largest in BC history.
No, and that's exactly right. I mean, you have to that what will be interesting to see is the investment numbers, the capital inflow numbers, when you take away that one project.
Right.
And I suspect what we'll see is investment numbers continue to go down, the numbers will be negative. This will turn those positive and will be a great story. But that will be one project, and that's not enough to build a province around.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last thing, prop rep challenge. So we are in court challenging the proportional representation process laid out by David Eby. There was a hilarious column in the province today that compared Eby's work on this file to that of a used car salesman. I say that comparing politicians to used car salesmen is offensive to used car salesmen, but hey, whatever works. However, we challenged it, and just yesterday we were assigned a judge. So this is taking the next step.
Yeah, it's moving forward. We took the advice of John Horgan when he said when reasonable citizens disagree, as he said that we were disagreeing on Kinder Morgan. He went to the courts. So we're doing the same thing. We're following the same path.
Exactly.
It's unfortunate we have to do that. We are not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that electoral reform shouldn't be that it isn't an important public policy issue that shouldn't be debated, and at some point in time, British Columbians could have their say on that, as they did in 2005 and 2009. But what we are saying is that this process is flawed. It's rushed. The question is confusing. The threshold is too low. The limitation on debate and the ability of individuals and organizations like ours and unions and a whole host of others to weigh in on this debate is too restrictive and unconstitutional. So we think we've raised some very important points, and we're hoping the court will consider these carefully and obviously take our view.
Yeah. Next steps, as far as we understand it, is there will now be a scheduling conference where the judge assigned will get our party and the Attorney General's office together and work out some sort of schedule for this. We, of course, are pushing for sooner than later. Obviously, British Columbians need to have clarity on this. We need to know if this is happening or not.
Well, the clock is ticking.
And the Attorney General will rag the puck as long as humanly possible, I'm sure. So hopefully the judge understands that this thing's coming to a head this fall, and we need to know whether or not it's in even a legal process. We don't believe it is.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. We'll keep everyone up to date, and hopefully we prevail.
Yes, we shall prevail. All right, that is it for us. By the way, ICBA, we represent 2,300 construction independent companies across the province of British Columbia. We have a big training service that trains more than 4,000 people a year. We are the single largest sponsor of trades apprentices in the province of British Columbia with more than 1,200. And we're also a, pardon me, I'm getting choked up about it, a third-party administrator for benefits, which helps provide benefits for the construction companies that are a part of ICBA. For more on us, icba.ca. Follow us on Twitter at ICBABC. You can follow me at Jordan Bateman. Chris doesn't tweet. He's a lucky, that's why he has me to handle all that nonsense. He gets just to live his life. He doesn't have to worry about the sewer that is Twitter. Facebook.com/the ICBA. We'll be back next week. You're back in town next week.
Yes, I am.
Exactly.
Also, our big gas tax video.
Oh, our big gas tax video, 360,000 views.
Right.
That is more than, we're getting close to like 3 times our second best video ever, which sadly is not you and I just, talking.
Yeah, it's not that exciting.
No, I know, but we're smart, kind of. So
we've got more videos coming out though.
Yes, more to come. More to come. Yeah. There will be good stuff. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you again soon.